This is Trump 9 months before the midterms. Watch what happens when he's asked if he'll accept the results if Republicans lose.
We are 9 months away now from America's next date with destiny. November the 3rd is midterm election day in the United States. Up for grabs, the balance of power on Capitol Hill, where Republicans currently enjoy wafer-thin majorities. If the Democrats can get their act together and vanquish them, they will get the chance to tie Donald Trump and his cronies up in impeachment and investigative knots for the final 2 years of his presidency. But this week, the president made it clear that he is simply not going to allow the American electorate freely to deliver the kind of devastating verdict on his authoritarian administration that the polls are currently predicting. For the third week in a row, the president was gearing up to rig the election's outcome.
These people were brought to our country to vote, and they vote illegally. And amazing that the Republicans aren't tougher on it.
That's the president on Monday, speaking on the Dan Bongino podcast. Mr. Bongino was until recently the president's deputy FBI director. In the first of his new season of shows, it was open season for his old boss to lie relentlessly about America's elections and what he claims falsely is a plague of voting by illegal immigrants and the urgent need for Republicans to do something about it.
The Republicans should say, we want to take over. We should take over the voting in at least 15 places. The Republicans ought to nationalize the voting.
And there it was, the birth of a new plan to overturn American democracy. You'll remember the president has been on a bit of a journey recently. Last month, on 2 separate occasions, he said that because he has absolutely smashed it in the presidency, the country shouldn't even be having midterm elections in November. It was absurd, he said, that Republicans should even have to stoop to battling the Democrats again. The response at the time from White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt.
The president was simply joking. He was saying, we're doing such a great job, we're doing everything the American people thought, maybe we should just keep rolling. But he was speaking facetiously.
Just a joke, because threatening to cancel elections is, as you know, a real thigh slapper. But this week, even the White House couldn't claim he was joking when he talked about nationalizing the voting. So how would Ms. Leavitt explain that one away?
What the president was referring to is the SAVE Act, which is a huge common sense piece of legislation that Republicans have supported, that President Trump is committed to signing into law. It provides very common sense measures for voting in our country, such as voter ID.
According to her on Monday afternoon, the president was not talking about tearing up the Constitution and putting the power to run elections in the hands of the federal government that he runs and taking that constitutionally guaranteed authority away from America's 50 individual states. He was just talking about voter ID, the proposal for people to require identification when they vote, a key Republican demand that he managed never to mention, not once, in his interview with Bongino. Unfortunately for Caroline Leavitt, the next time the press got to talk to him, the president completely undercut her and doubled down. And listen carefully to this at length. It is the sound of the American Constitution being shredded and American democracy being derailed.
What exactly did you mean when you said that you should nationalize elections, and which 15 states are you talking about?
I want to see elections be honest, and if a state can't run an election, I think the people behind me should do something about it. Because, if you think about it, a state is an agent for the federal government in elections. I don't know why the federal government doesn't do them anyway. But when you see some of these states about how horribly they run their elections, what a disgrace it is, I think the federal government, when you see crooked elections, and we had plenty of them, and by the way, we had them last time, but go to 2020 and look at the facts that are coming out. Rigged, crooked elections. If we have areas, take a look at Detroit, take a look at Pennsylvania, take a look at Philadelphia. You go take a look at Atlanta, look at some of the places that horrible corruption on elections, and the federal government should not allow that. The federal government should get involved.
So this is really serious stuff now, and to remind you, not a single fact supports his concocted claim that widespread corruption is tainting elections anywhere in America, nor his continuing insistence that he, not Joe Biden, won the 2020 vote, no matter what criminal charges his pliant Department of Justice brings in Fulton County, Georgia, following that FBI raid I told you about last week. What he's proposing runs directly counter to the very first article of the US Constitution. It says in black and white, America's individual states get to run their own elections. It doesn't say anything about them being an agent of the federal government. The men and women who count the votes are working for their state, not for the national government. And to underscore the new threat that the president is making to the sanctity of American elections, he went even further in an interview with NBC News.
Will you trust the results of the midterms if Republicans lose control of Congress?
I will, if the elections are honest. Look, I want the last one that wants to complain. I just had a great election. They say one of the greatest elections, you will agree, ever. Won all 7 swing states. Won 84% of the counties in America. That's why the map is all red. We just had a great election.
When he wins, the election is great. When he loses, it's rigged. The voters are on notice now. He is not going to accept any kind of Republican defeat in November.
He's explaining to you exactly what he wants to do, because for him, the 2020 election is the original sin.
That's Senator Chris Murphy, a Democrat from Connecticut, sounding the alarm on behalf of his party on left-leaning MS Now TV.
Everything he does is an effort to explain away that loss and make sure that it never happens again. And I do worry that the scope of this obsession that he has right now with rigging the 2026 and the 2028 elections so that he doesn't lose again is all-consuming.
All-consuming indeed, to the point where last night Trump shared a video on his social media account purporting to provide backing for his claim that Biden lost the 2020 election that included brief imagery of Barack and Michelle Obama portrayed as monkeys in a jungle. The White House says people complaining about the video are engaged in fake outrage. Outrage of an undeniable kind came this week from survivors of Jeffrey Epstein.
Accountability seems to be a very hard won in the world today, and particularly in this country.
That is Anuska DeGiorgio, one of the main prosecution witnesses at the trial of Epstein's girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell. She says she felt utterly betrayed last Friday when personal information that was supposed to be shielded from the public was included in the 3 million pages of Epstein documents released by the Department of Justice.
I got a sinking feeling in my stomach. And in some ways it was like the sinking feeling of being traumatized by the perpetrators, being re-traumatized by the perpetrators. But this time it felt even worse because the current administration were meant to be releasing the files responsibly.
Thousands of pages were sloppily redacted. The documents sparked nightmares not only for Epstein's victims, but also, of course, for our own Prime Minister, thanks to the revelations contained about Lord Mandelson, for Bill Gates, for Elon Musk, for Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, and for Barack Obama's former White House counsel Kathy Rumler, among many others. But not, of course, for the president, speaking aboard Air Force One hours after the document's release.
I didn't see it myself, but I was told by some very important people that not only does it absolve me, it's the opposite of what people were hoping, the radical left.
Absolution is not yet completely guaranteed. Included in the documents is a summary of tips provided by the public to the Department of Justice that detail horrific allegations about the president's conduct. But there is no indication that investigators found any of those claims to be credible. Some of them were second-hand in nature, and some included no contact information for investigators to pursue. Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche insists there's no cover-up.
We did not protect President Trump. We didn't protect or not protect anybody. I mean, I think that there's a hunger or a thirst for information that I do not think will be satisfied by the review of these documents. And there's nothing I can do about that.
Congress is now demanding testimony not only from Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, but also from Lord Mandelson. Democrats want millions more pages released by the government. On Monday, former federal prosecutor Ankush Kaduri told Tom Swarbrick on LBC that dumping everything into the public domain was never a good idea in the first place.
There is a reason we in the US have never dumped all of the material from a criminal investigation, the raw material from a criminal investigative file, into the public domain. Because it was always going to do what it has done, which is produce more conspiracy theories and more questions. This would have been obvious to anyone who is familiar with human nature, how the internet works, and the linear progression of time. This is what was going to happen.
In other words, the Epstein scandal is not going away. Other news this week saw a promise by the government to pull 700 masked ICE and Border Patrol agents off the streets of Minneapolis, but leave at least 2,000 of them in place. And that news will not have gone down well with Bad Bunny. I don't know if you're familiar with his oeuvre, but the Puerto Rican legend of reggaeton will star in the halftime show at Sunday's Super Bowl. Last weekend at the Grammys, he infuriated the White House by demanding ICE agents should be removed entirely from the streets of America.
Before I say thanks to God, I'm gonna say ICE out.
This Sunday, he will be performing, perish the thought, in Spanish. So for the first time ever, there is to be an alternative, unofficial halftime show in which pro-Trump singer Kid Rock will perform in what is being billed as an all-American event. We are even at the point now where the country can't come together in the middle of the Super Bowl for a celebration of America's diversity.
Right, so what you just heard there is genuinely terrifying when you actually break it down. He started by floating the idea there shouldn't even be midterm elections. White House said he was joking, just Trump being Trump. Hilarious banter about cancelling democracy. Then he said Republicans should nationalize the voting in at least 15 states. Caroline Leavitt tried spinning it as voter ID talk, the SAVE Act, common sense stuff. But then he got asked about it again, and mate, he didn't mention voter ID once. Instead, he said states are just agents of the federal government anyway, and the feds should take over elections in Detroit, Philadelphia, Atlanta. Notice the pattern? Places he lost. Then you've got the Epstein files. 3 million pages supposedly redacted to protect victims, except they botched it. Survivors are saying it felt like being re-traumatized all over again because the administration released it so sloppily. The files name everyone. Mandelson, Gates, Musk, Commerce Secretary Lupnick. But somehow, Trump's absolved, according to him, even though there are literally tips from the public about his conduct in there. Department of Justice says they weren't credible. No follow-up possible. How convenient. And that bit from the former prosecutor? This would have been obvious to anyone familiar with human nature, how the internet works, and the linear progression of time. They knew dumping everything would create more conspiracy theories. Did it anyway. Survivors suffer while perpetrators walk free. He's not hiding the plan. States that don't vote for him are corrupt, can't be trusted. Federal government needs to step in. His federal government. This isn't some backroom conspiracy. It's happening on podcasts, in NBC interviews, at press conferences. He's explaining exactly how he intends to stay in power, regardless of votes. And he's doing it because he genuinely doesn't think anyone can stop him. So far, he's been absolutely right.